Next, we have a really, really thoughtful CEO of a major New York and global company, S&P Global. Doug Peterson is somebody that I met in Davos, and he was talking about such interesting stuff and somewhat unexpected for me that we stayed in touch, and we've got him here today. And Diane Brady, a great journalist, will interview him. Diane, please take it away.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great to have you.
Hi, everybody. So thoughtful and provocative. That's the expectation for this. And I have to say, so welcome, please. This is Doug Peterson. I am not, but I used to know S&P as sort of the money-making part of McGraw-Hill when I was part of Business Week, and now you're, nimbler, faster, stronger. Tell us, first of all, give us up to date in terms of S&P Global. A little bit about who you are, your aspirations, your mission, what's different.
Well, thank you, and thank you, David. S&P Global, as you know, is a company that provides benchmarks to different markets through our ratings, our indices, information about commodity markets. And over the last 5 years, we went through a journey of transforming our company from a conglomerate to an operating company. But you think about what were the challenges in the markets. After the financial crisis, regulation was changing around the world and moving quickly across the entire financial sector. The incredible amount of volatility in the financial markets, and we still see that. There's questions now about what's going to happen with interest rates as central banks unwind their liquidity they pumped into the markets. Other challenges like the massive change in technology in the markets, and what does that mean for our own company? And then things that you've been talking about, very interesting, climate change and ESG, and what are those? And our company has been responding to those as we manage our business, and we've found ways that we can address some of these, and I hope we can talk about some of these challenges.
So I want to start with the fact I was intrigued by you have a venture arm. So lots of companies have venture. What does it mean for you? Is it just sprinkling fairy dust out there to give money to good causes? You've had Kensho acquisition. Can you give us some sense as to sort of strategically what you're looking for and what it's done for you?
It started with a realization, and this sounds so obvious, but it not necessarily obvious when you look at it inside of large corporations. It started with a realization that our data was so powerful and so embedded in the way our clients work, but we needed to have a roadmap for how we were going to upgrade and update our technology. And so we had internal incubation, but we decided that we also were going to be making investments in venture. So we started with a venture fund in San Francisco called Greenvisor. We have an investment in a fund in Singapore, another one in Tel Aviv. And through those, we started making small acquisitions, not acquisitions, but 5%, 10%, no more than about $10 million each of these investments.
Tell us about Kensho, because I think people are really curious about how you're leveraging artificial intelligence, machine learning. We'll get into blockchain later. No crypto,
Kensho is a machine learning artificial intelligence company that has customers on Wall Street, in the security community in Washington. And we made an initial investment in them in their B round of their funding. And after about 6 months, 9 months of working with them, they were doing projects for us as a vendor. They did a project for us to rebuild how our internal data searches. So this was, how are we going to use search to be able to look at our own data? How are we going to be able to have search that can link to information about weather, about markets? And we looked at that. We had another project where they built some forward-looking credit risk indicators, things that are totally non-traditional, like looking at Google searches and seeing what are you going to learn from a Google search.
Augmenting human beings around how they're assessing companies and such.
And visualization. And so about 9 months ago, 6 months ago, I said, well, we should buy these people. And so we bought the company. We're now integrating it across everything we do, from ingesting data to managing data to producing new products, and then to delivering it and ensuring that we can engage with the markets. So Kensho now is part of S&P Global, and they continue to support external clients, but we now have this engine of really brilliant PhDs and physicists, mathematicians, economists who have joined our team, and they've allowed us to really accelerate our AI.
And one of the things today is you're actually announcing some news around this, but to get back to what David was saying from Davos, is that what he was alluding to was you had some very cool visualization of data around crude oil flows, what's happening with solar, a lot of these ESG measures. Talk about that, because it's not just something you're using internally, but you're also, I believe, selectively partnering with others to let them use it as well.
Well, one of the biggest frustrations in coming in from this last panel, one of the biggest frustrations that people have is when you, in your daily life, when you have this device and your iPads and things, they're so easy to use, they're so integrated into your daily life, they're visual, they're easy to use, but in the workspace, you get there and you have a desktop that you still have to cut and paste and move things around. So about a couple years ago, we bought a company that specialized in visualization, and we started building these tools using this really rich data we already have. And what we did at Davos is we gave data to Davos, to the World Economic Forum, to Carnegie Mellon, and then ourselves put together these data walls, and we were using energy information. We looked at global oil flows for the last 50 years. We looked at, one of the most interesting was energy transmission and energy development in the United States, and we looked at all of the power generation over 50 years and the way it shifted from coal to natural gas to solar and wind, and all of those trends across the economy. And then we also did projections going forward of what are going to be the costs if you don't find new ways to get clean energy.
And is this incorporated into how you're looking at companies? Because I'm reading here over 150 indices you have now that are ESG focused. Like, if you're in the audience, how do they use that information? And is there ways that they can be leveraging that in terms of, the trust, the greenness of a bond, for example, that sort of thing?
So a couple things in your question. on the first part, continuing to look at how we're developing new products and new services with all the data we have. One of the areas is in ESG, environmental, social, and governance. And in particular, in the environment space, there's not a lot of standards. There's not a lot of traditional data available, or even or consistent ways to provide that information. So across our company, we have many, many different products and services now. We're starting to incorporate. We have a green bond evaluation tool that we issue through our rating agency. We have 150 indices that we've developed. For example, everybody knows about the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, from the United Nations. There's 17 of those. And number 6, which is about clean water, we now have one of our 150 ESG indices is a clean water index. And so these are the types of things we're doing to develop ESG products and services to get that consistency.
So to bring it back to sustainable solutions for growth, it's both your own growth, but the growth of other companies. One of the things that's really challenging, and we will take some questions from the audience too, but given the speed of disruption, given all the different new business models, it's a real challenge to assess the credibility of some of these models, the trust. As you're looking at the environment, are these tools that help you measure other companies better? Do you feel it's helping you to grow more sustainably? Well,
there's a couple things on that. When we issue a product or we look at the data, we will look at our own company to see how we measure up against that. But importantly, when you talk to endowments, to foundations, to sovereign wealth funds, they're shifting very rapidly their focus to incorporate these tools. And I'll give you an example of something that we're announcing later today. One of the companies in our portfolio is TrueCost, which measures information about carbon, water, and waste usage. Mm-hmm. And we've just developed a sustainable development goal approach to. It's a TrueCost SDG measurement tool, and it allows companies to look at all of the 17 SDGs and see how do they stack up. How do they stack up in their own sense, and how do they stack up against the industry, and how do they stack up against competitors as well as other industries. And so these are the types of things that we hear from pension funds, from sovereign wealth funds. They want these kinds of tools to look at their portfolio, and we're quickly trying to provide the services and products that can meet those needs.
So I'm an entrepreneur in the audience, say, and there's, okay, you could invest in me, you could buy me. Could I partner with you? Like, what kind of partnerships? Who comes to you and why? Is it because they need the data, they've got the cool model, but nothing to put in it?
One thing that we found very typical of a lot of the fintechs and regtech companies which have started up, they have a small amount of capital. They've built something that's a screen or an app that looks great. It's visual, it's easy to use, it's very colorful, it's intuitive, but behind that they don't have any data. And they know that we have this data gold mine that comes from 50 plus years of information about markets, of indices, of equities, credit, fixed income. And so many times a company will approach us to see if there's a way we can partner because of our data. And then beyond that is many startups also find once you get to a certain level, you need a sales force, you need customers, you need a way to have infrastructure to be able to support markets. And so this is another reason many of the fintech companies come to us, but we're also out looking on our own as well.
So I actually want to take some questions from the audience. And does anybody have questions? Just raise your hand. There's one right here. Do you project or do you get a microphone? You get a microphone. You're lucky you get a microphone.
Yes, thank you. Madeline Varkay. I am curious. We hear so many different types of voluntary standards, for example, the SASB. How do you compare yourselves to SASB? And what's the impact then on the institutional investor community, TCFB, et cetera? So where do we have a uniformity in measurement standards, in indexes?
Yes, so when it's a great question. It's something that people are really struggling with. Is there are no standards. You have the SASB standards. You also have the TCFD, which you talked about. That's the Task Force for Climate-Related Financial Disclosure. One of our executives was a member of the TCFD. What we're doing is providing the raw data so that people can use it to measure carbon output. They can use it to measure waste or water output. They can use it to measure governance standards. They can use it to measure social standards. So we haven't set up ourselves a standard. We're not a SASB or a TCFD ourselves. We're providing the raw data, the analytics, and the tools so that they can then develop their own standards. They can measure themselves. But these are very important initiatives, and we're members of many of these different task forces. We try to help develop these new standards.
But as you're measuring companies, you impose, for example, carbon disclosure has always been, people disclose what they want to disclose. You must hold them to standards of accountability and make sure that there's a standardization across how you measure it yourselves.
So one of the differences between financial reporting and climate reporting today, carbon reporting, is that in financial reporting, you're audited. So when you issue financial statements, your financial statements are audited probably by one of the big four accounting firms under very specific standards. Today, if you produce your information about your carbon output or your water output, it's voluntary. There's not necessarily standards around how you do that, when you do it, if it's every quarter, if it's every year, if it's in your financial statements or not. But because we're now publishing this information about 12,000 companies and it's becoming the standardized information source, companies that don't have their information in there are being asked by their investors, why isn't your information in the true cost database? If you're not in the data, if your data is not there, people wonder why isn't it there. And so you're starting to see such high interest on carbon information, on climate and other types of environmental and social and governance information that people want to see it, and then they're demanding it, which means that it's a cycle that then we can provide more and more.
Okay. Do you have other questions? Because I can immediately go to blockchain. No. But well, as we're assessing, because I am curious about blockchain. I'm not going to put you too much on it because you've actually been doing some work in this. And one of the reasons I mention it is when I talk to fintech companies, a lot of when they look at who they want to disrupt, you're one of the companies they want to disrupt, and give me some sense as to how blockchain, how you view it internally, and when you look at the marketplace, how potent is it?
Well, blockchain, if you think about the distributed ledger technology that's behind it and potentially smart contracts, we're thinking about it from how you can digitize or secure information or information flows, not as a trading venue, not as a cryptocurrency. But I'll give you an example of one of the things we've already done. We have a partnership with the Fujairah organization. It's one of the United Arab Emirates. It's the United Arab Emirate where most of the transshipment of oil and oil products and oil derivative products goes through Fujairah. The organization that the government has that oversees the oil flows and product flows used to get all of their information with spreadsheets, with paper documents, with phone calls, with emails. We've developed with them a secure private blockchain where all of the participants in the market now report all of their data via the blockchain to the government. And so we're partnering in that. So we've developed a live, private, secure blockchain application. And since we've rolled that out, the information is just pouring in from around the world from people that want to see how we can use this for the rest of the supply chain of the energy markets.
Do we have other questions in the audience, or can I just, did you have some over there? Yes, hi. You want to, you don't need a mic. You can just project.
I might not need a mic.
No, you don't.
If
You're
I
just,
need one or not. Oh, can you somebody turn
okay,
my
the
mic?
charisma. You
You're
have
okay.
a mic.
So,
They just turned it on.
Thank you. So, Doug, one of the things that's interesting about what you're doing is you're gathering data that one might say governments ought to be gathering, right? Of course, but it's a global economy. You're doing it globally. There is no global government. This is an issue we discussed yesterday. It comes up intermittently. And I know also, it just happens you're somewhat more sanguine about our governance situation today than most people have been on the stage. I mean, do you see, in effect, what you're doing as being a remedy for the fact that governments are, especially our own government, are essentially relinquishing a lot of their previous responsibility for monitoring what's going on in the environment, in the economy, and will it be a sufficient antidote?
Well, a couple of comments. First of all, your first point about being global is critical. It's part of our business model well beyond just what we're talking about with sustainability factors. It's part of our business model. People that are using our information and our data to make decisions, they want to know that we use the exact same standards in Tokyo, Mumbai, Sao Paulo, New York, that we apply those standards globally. We gather the data the same way, we produce the products, we process it. And so that's really critical, and governments aren't going to be able to do that. The second thing is that we see that when you talk about whether it's blockchain or AI or new types of ESG approach, government is not at the forefront of this. There's very few places anywhere in the world except for maybe Norway where the government is leading this kind of initiative. And so we think that we want to be on the cutting edge and the leading edge of this, and we're not going to wait for the governments to make decisions about how they want to see reporting and the standards they want to set. We want to provide that global service, and so we don't think that we're going to wait for the government. Clearly, if somebody like Mark Carney is going to lead a task force through the FSB to come up with for the TCFD, we want to be part of that. And we're going to accompany the governments, but we want to be there to lead.
That's great.
One of the, and we don't have a lot of time left, but
question
oh, there's a question over there. Go ahead, because I could ask questions also, but I was going to ask you. I do think as well give us some sense of sort of the market since there's so much volatility right now. But we'll first go to the question. Go ahead. Hi.
Hi, Megan Gardner from Olympies. My question, it's sort of a follow-up from what I think it was David asking the question. I couldn't see over there. So the kind of worldview that we heard this morning from Jeffrey Sachs was basically that we can't rely on the markets aren't great at supporting the environment, right? And so my question is it just fundamentally a different worldview that markets can or cannot? Or is that therefore intractable? Or is there a place in the middle where markets and governments are symbiotic, or in some other way we're coming to a middle ground on who should own the majority of responsibility for solving those issues?
I wasn't here to hear I wasn't here this morning to hear what Jeffrey Sachs had to say, but my own personal view is that markets become efficient, but they need to have a structure where you have a regulator, you have oversight, you have certain parameters being set by the government. As an example, the banking system or the financial systems everywhere in the globe, because they're taking people's deposits and they're taking money from consumers, are protected through a regulatory system. Energy and greenness is something that you can achieve a lot of goals through a framework, either through subsidies or tax incentives, carbon markets that the government can help set up, but then they become markets. The places where carbon markets actually work is because it's a carbon market, not because it was implied or the government is running it. So I'm not sure what Jeffrey said, but I believe in markets myself. I think markets can be efficient. I think there's very important market solutions. We're providing some of them. For instance, I talked about this SDG product we're rolling out today. That's a market-based approach to get information out to information that is needed by the markets, and we're doing that as a market approach, not because the government asked us.
I sense the barbarians at the gate here to keep on the. But let me. But we do have 37 seconds. We do have 35 seconds for you to give us some insights as to what's around the corner. Any sort of last words or any thoughts in terms of what's on your radar and what you want people to take away from this?
I would go back to where we started on technology. The theme about responsible growth and sustainability. Technology is going to change everything we do, and technology is actually one of the most important answers for our energy and for sustainability. But it's something that you have to embrace. You can't wait for it to happen. You can't hope it happens. And that's something we've done in our own company, is to try to take technology and embed it into everything we do in a very proactive way, and also challenge ourselves. It's not easy for somebody like me that's been working for almost 40 years to become a technologist overnight. And so I'm having to learn myself and push myself and challenge myself. And I think that that's something that all companies have to be doing, all organizations have to do, because it is going to be one of the tools that's going to help us solve responsible, sustainable, long-term growth.
Great. Doug Peterson, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.